Peace, Barricade.
So, hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Wolfgang Lieberknecht. I'm here participating from Germany, from the International Peace Factory in Manfred. And because of the experience of my parents and grandparents who were both in war, the fathers, and then when I was young, the war of the Americans in Vietnam, I understood peace is not a gift. You have to work for it. And therefore, I tried in my whole life to take responsibility now for more than 50 years to bring things forward. But naturally, we all see, and I know it is all not easy. We believed sometimes we have become further, no? But now there is a risk of a world war. I see how weak the forces for peace, the power for peace, still is in our world. Yeah, we make today a conversation about the situation in Romania after the annulment of the elections, because this is very much connected with the question of peace and war. And we make the conversation together with Maria, from a peace activist from Romania, and with Hans, environment and peace activist of Romania, who lives partly in Germany, partly in Romania, and partly in Brussels to make lobby work for peace there. So now we start with hello, my dear colleagues. According to the democratic rules of Romania, probably now a new president would have been in position, who said he will advocate for ending the war in Ukraine and for peace negotiations. And as a NATO and EU member, he could also have influenced the Western policies in these institutions. But this is not. Is not anymore possible, because when he won in the first round of the presidential elections, the Constitution Court stopped the second round, where, as far we can estimate, he guessed he would have won. And now, how is the situation now, how people are discussing this in Romania as an attack on the democracy, as a risk that we come soon in war? Because these candidates said they are decided to go to war in next future. And how it is discussed in Ukraine. Is there protest on the streets? Is there protest in the parliament, which was also new elected? How is the situation?
Should I?
Yes, Maria.
Look, first and foremost, thank you so much for inviting me. Now, the first thing that I want to say is offer a balanced perspective on this surprise candidate, Călin Georgescu himself. Călin Georgescu seemed to come out of nowhere because he based his electoral campaign on a very new social media channel, TikTok. A lot of people knew him, but they known him only from TikTok. The political establishment, the political leaders, the political parties, intellectuals, and people watching the TV, and even the vast majority of journalists, had no idea how successful Călin Georgescu actually was. It was, in a sense, not a coup, but it was something extraordinary that happened in Romania when this candidate that seemed to come out of nowhere won the first round of presidential elections. It was actually children and young people who were very savvy of TikTok and this media channel that were able to predict better than the 4 exit poll companies that Romania paid in order to give us an estimate before the elections actually took place, or before the votes were counted. And it was actually young people that were able to give us a fairer estimation of Călin Georgescu's success. First, so he was unknown. It was a shock. It was a shock for everybody, even for me. This person came out of nowhere. Who was he? How was this possible? But when you looked closer, you saw a very bizarre candidate. Now, there is this tendency in the West to portray Călin Georgescu as some sort of peace hero. He's not actually so. The closest political personality that I would associate Călin Georgescu with is Donald Trump, in the sense that he makes a lot of very bizarre and exotic declarations. He is also very keen on Israel and moving the embassy, Romanian embassy, to Jerusalem. And also he said that the first president that he would invite to Romania was Netanyahu. So he's not at all against the war in Gaza, but he is against the war in Ukraine. We should also give you a very balanced perspective on the guy. And in terms of the bizarre declarations, I told you, Wolfgang, in our personal discussion, that you should imagine the guy like a combination between Jordan Peterson and somebody from the Alternative für Deutschland, the right-wingers. It is paradoxical, shocking to see a person that has such conservative views, conservative even, you know, extremist, in the sense that he declared that women would not have the capacity and the ability and the force to be presidents in Romania. So that type of conservative, and yet, to be fair and honest, he was the only candidate that said, one, that we should focus on our problems in Romania because we are very poor, that we should keep our distance as far, and we should keep ourselves as far as possible as a country from the conflict in Ukraine, and we should follow the strategy of peace. I think he was the only candidate, again, that even uttered the word peace very strongly, with peace in Ukraine. But I told you, Wolfgang, I do not agree with those who try to portray him exclusively in the positive light, like this hero of the masses, because the guy is very, very controversial. Apart from the crazy conservative declarations, there is this combination of Zen mentality, taking bath in cold water and saying this is good for your health. So this is a combination of Zen, New Age mentality and ideas, conservatives. And on top of everything else in this very elaborate and complex salad, you have the theme of peace in Ukraine. And I will come back in the second part and I will try to explain some of his success. But now for the Constitutional Court, I think it had no legal, you know.
Yeah, but let us come to this later. No? First,
now
Hans.
nobody's discussing. I just want to finish now. Nobody's discussing anything because it didn't feel like a coup. Because the Constitutional Court gathered it on all the elections and we were again shocked. We were just coming back from the shock of having this surprise candidate, and then the second shock that the elections will no longer take place. And unfortunately, the most vocal and aggressive part of the society kind of agreed with that.
Okay, but in one point only, in the West, he is from the mainstream media. He's not portrayed as a peace candidate. He's portrayed as a radical right one who should be condemned. Now, only the peace activists, some, they see in him a hope to prevent this war. Okay, so Hans.
There's nothing to add, only to summarize that indeed, similarly to Trump, you know, he has this very complex, weird discourse that includes peace in Ukraine, but anything else is actually crap, shit, that he's saying. That's it, more or less. Nevertheless, I think the decision of the Constitutional Court is super, super, super illegal, but that's another discussion. That's it. There's nothing more to add from my side.
Yes, I want to emphasize that, of course, it didn't feel like a coup. But even legal experts, that was the person, and they even got the courage to write articles in the media, and it was this person, Dumbrava is his last name, I don't remember the first name, but he was a judge at the Superior Council of Judges in Romania, and he actually wrote that, first and foremost, the basis of this decision was flawed. If you look at the documents that were made public, they were coming from the secret services. They were presented in the Superior Council, how do you call this, of Security, that is run by the President Klaus Iohannis, and then they were made available, partly available for the public, and they are kind of bogus. And keep in mind that they are mentioning the implication in the promotion of Călin Georgescu of a state actor, but they do not provide proof, and they do not name the state actor. It might be, since Georgescu seems so keen on inviting Netanyahu, Israel, or the United States, the Christian right in the United States. The documents do not say that Russia intervened in Romania, and even if they did, there was no proof. And even if there was proof, you know what the problem is? The Constitutional Court has a clear mandate to annul the elections if they see that there was a fraud. For instance, there were bags with votes that were thrown away, you know, things that were blatantly, you know, suggesting a major fraud taking place. But this was not the case, because the Constitutional Court ordered the Electoral Authority and the Electoral Bureau to recount all the votes, and it appeared as clear as daylight that it was no Russian interference there, and it was Romanians themselves that put, you know, the stamp on and voted for Georgescu. Nobody came from Moscow to vote for him. The Romanians did. And the Constitutional Court would have had the mandate to stop and annul the elections only in the case of a fraud. For instance, 10 million people voted for you and I give the votes to Hans. Okay, then the Constitutional Court comes and annuls the elections, but there was no such thing. I think we are setting a precedent worldwide where, based on some documents coming from the secret services, we annul the will of the people, basically.
Yeah, Hans, you have to add something?
Yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, I have read those documents because they are available online, and there's nothing in there that that documents a fraud or a foreign interference in the election. Even more, it's being stated several times that the elections took place in normally and without being without complications or fraud. It's being said expressis verbis. The elections happened normally, and that's it. So there's no argument for the Constitutional Court to annul those decisions. And even more, it's getting even more complicated. The more you go into details, the Constitutional Court did not have a competence to rule on this issue. It should have been a normal court, not a constitutional court. It should have happened earlier, and so on. So the more you go into details, the more serious arguments you find that the ruling of the Constitutional Court was absolutely illegal. And that's extremely worrying. It's very worrying because, in addition to all this, the European Union and the American Embassy, they have applauded the decision of the Constitutional Court. So imagine, that's where we are, okay? A massively illegal decision based off some speculations, no legal basis, even based on those speculations, for annulling the elections. And then the European Union and the USA, they say, well, great decision, Romania, that you have annulled the elections. That's where we are, you know. And okay, which way to go from here? That's my question. that's my
Yeah,
question. Where do we head as a society from here?
Before, we must say if he is right, because this candidate, how I see, is very much in networks of the elites. He was part of Club of Rome. He worked for the UNO environment program. So he has a lot of international contacts. And I think he really believes that they need war and want to do it soon. And how I see it, the elections of the new president, did the president in Romania, if he would have been elected, had a chance to stop this? If the preparation of war going in, could he do something in EU, in NATO, and in Romania that you are not driven in the war, or we are not in Europe driven in the war? Yeah, is it how it is?
Yeah, that's the wider picture that I see. So the USA and the EU, they have interfered and forcing or convincing our president to put pressure on the Constitutional Court to kick Georgescu out of the whole of political life, not only of this procedure, of these elections, but of political life at all. That's at stake, because during the next elections he may come back. But who knows when the elections will happen? And indeed, Georgescu, he's a guy of the deep state. You know, he has always been in key positions and then disappeared and reappeared. And he is well connected with Secret Service. So there are several factions in the Secret Services in Romania. Let's say the pro-Western and the pro-Eastern factions. And they fight each other, apparently, over the course of Romania. And I think similar things happen in other Eastern European countries as well, or in Russia, or in Greece in the past, or in Serbia. Okay, in the worst case, Georgescu knows that the West is planning to send us to war, our countries, and they try to oppose. Or more softly put, from a Russian perspective, he's the man of Russia, and Russia tries to weaken Romania as an important actor in the eastern flank of NATO. You know, so that's my picture. So if he would have been elected, he would have had means at disposal to severely block, so to say, Romania in the NATO framework, together with a nationalist government, maybe, you know, because Romania could end up with a populist nationalist government plus a nationalist president. Romania could have, been very vulnerable from the NATO point of view. So that's the picture that I see.
But there are no proofs for direct intervention of EU and NATO.
Well, no, because it's the nature of their interventions. But they have all applauded. They have all congratulated the Constitutional Court. So they have supported openly the decision of the Constitutional Court.
So how it is discussed now Maria, do you have something to add?
Yes, I want to add that in Romania, presidents don't have a lot of power with concerns to the economy, because that is the attributes of the prime minister. So, but they have a lot of power in terms of representing our country internationally. And also they have power because the president is the head of the National Council of Defense and Security, which is, you know, the security body that basically is on top of the security apparatus in our country, the army, the secret services, and everything else. And the president is the head of that. So even though he has not much power to influence the internal affairs in Romania, he has power in terms of representing our country internationally. So you see that here there was a big, you know, here there were the stakes in terms of Georgescu. because he might have been in total agreement with the war in Gaza. He might have been even in agreement with some sort of strategy to pivot to China, to attack Iran or whatever. But in terms of NATO, of course, they were concerned with the war in Ukraine. And it was especially this war, you know, that was a problem for the EU and NATO. And of course, we don't have direct proof, except the fact that they applauded the solution. And what is even sadder is that a large portion of Romanian intellectuals, people that kind of benefited from Romania entering the EU and NATO, are very much in line with this decision. And they consider that you can play God, or you can play the providence or the enlightened leader that is saving the people from itself by banning, you know, elections. And they give, even though, and I instruct the public to look at Richard Wolff's description of what happened actually in Germany when Hitler came to power, because the famous economist's father of Richard Wolff was there, so he witnessed directly what happened in Germany, and he said that Hitler did not came to power through free elections. This is a myth. But in Romania and also in these very enlightened circles, this example is given that, look, Hitler came to power through free elections. Are you willing to take that chance again? Let's stop the Romanians now. Let's save them from themselves. You know, let's play God. And even though it is a myth that Hitler won, you know, the free election, it was fantastic in Germany, and just by mistake, you know, Germans for some reason voted for the wrong guy. It is always this mistrust of the elites with regards to the masses, that they consider inferior and stupid, and they might very easily vote for the wrong guy, and this is why they have to be guided from above, which is in and out of itself completely undemocratic, you know. And it opens the door for further and further abuse. And I just add the fact, just recently, a researcher who lived a long time in Hungary, Stefano Bottoni, published an interview, and he wrote the obvious. In 2026, there are elections in Hungary. Since we opened the door for the annulment of the will of the people, who could say now that Orban would not use this in his advantage, of some leader that the European Union doesn't like? Because this is what happens when you open the door for abuse. Once you open the door for abuse for people that you like, or for political leaders that align with your agenda, that abuse can be used also by people that are in complete opposition to you, isn't it?
It is, and it is strange also now that in Georgia, a person was voted in who doesn't want war with Russia, who doesn't want to go, that the country starts also a civil war like Ukraine. They warned the people, said, let us not go. He won the election. And they also make big demonstrations organized and supported here publicly from the West, that the government says that they need new elections. I think we see now in this preparation of a war that they really attack democracy if the people don't want to go to this war. But how is this? Are there no people who are against this decision and said no? We want that this person can stand for the second round. Is there not a big discussion and opposition in the country against this decision of the Constitutional Court?
Not really. I don't know. Hans, do you see there is one media channel, Realitatea TV, who is now constantly inviting Georgescu, and they are discussing it. And there is radio Gold FM. And there are a few publications. Of course, all the enlightened elite calls all these people Russian puppets, Putinists, idiots, manipulators, propagandists. They throw at them all the insults possible. And not really. But people are very, very sad because, of course, they found themselves in the position where their will was annulled.
And also those who voted for him, they are not on the streets. They are not on the streets. They are not protesting. No? Maybe on TikTok, I don't know if they're opposing, but publicly there is no force in the country, who can make pressure. That the president.
Hans, do you see somebody? No. Do you see some major opposition? How do you see it?
I'm abroad, so I'm not in the situation, so I don't know the details, and I don't follow all the details. Apparently, from what I've heard from a senator who is very active online on YouTube, the communication of the decision of the Constitutional Court has been made in a very clever way through the TV stations that are actually apparently full with Secret Service personnel. Okay, so they communicated the decision in this manner. Okay, the elections will be annulled, but don't go protesting in the street because there will be provocations and chaos will erupt. So stay at home. Don't go protesting. Okay, we annul the presidential elections, but don't go protesting. And they have communicated this systematically. Apparently, I don't know I didn't. Check.
But even Georgescu said the following thing, because now the danger, Wolfgang, you know what it is? The president has the ability to declare state of emergency. And if he declares state of emergency, his power is, greater, and he can take decisions without the democratic consultations, and the whole democratic system is put on hold because there is an emergency state. And this is why even Georgescu and his followers said no protests, because it can get even worse. And there were those who were speculating, and there were reports that that was the plan, that people will rush to the streets enraged, and that would give the government and President Iohannis leverage, and that would give them the advantage, and that would give them also reason to declare state of emergency, and that not only the elections would have been annulled, but the power of the incumbent president would have been even greater through this state of emergency. And also, I have to tell you that unfortunately, intellectuals in Romania consider themselves not manipulated, but unfortunately they are, in the sense that if you throw at them things like Russia, Putin, Russia, they act like, they are like, you put electric shocks in their backs, and they act very crazy, and they are very scared. And unfortunately, the vast majority of intellectuals, singers, actors, influencers, the elite, if you like, is applauding the decision because they were taken aback by this candidate who I told you that is kind of bizarre. I mean, he makes even Donald Trump look sometimes very reasonable and quite a scientist, like a composed scientist. And this is why, for most of them and they didn't want to believe that something like this might happen through a democratic process, and that their fellow citizens might vote for something like this. And they are shocked, and they applauded the decision. Yay, the democracy is safe. But is it? I have the following metaphor. It is as if you have a high pressure, boiling, high pressure on the stove, something is boiling, and then you try to put your hands like this not to see it, and this is how you claim you solved the problem, but it will explode, because Romanians are furious. Romanians want politicians to discuss job loss, migration, the fact that they have to migrate to your country and take care of your elderly in Germany, and be treated like garbage. and have no job here in Romania, no decent job here in Romania. The fact that this is a reality, I mean, and it is such a shame that no serious politician is addressing this. And even if you dare to address it, you are considered, I don't know, Putinist. How is this Putinism? This is basic economic reality. There are no decent and high-paid jobs in Romania, and Romanians have to go and do some sort of second-class jobs in the West. And then the fact that there is no peace, no discussion about peace. Nobody's mentioning peace. Okay, I understand. We are in NATO. It is an alliance. But even in this alliance, we see that there are leaders like Orban who are not crazy pro-war. And nobody kicked him out of NATO. So you can have a more independent, position, even if you are in the European Union and NATO. No such things from our politicians. And here comes this bizarre individual addressing all these issues. And of course, Romanians are rushing to vote for him. Of course. Do you know, I even met progressive people, lesbians, people from the LGBT community. And trust me, he's the most conservative guy you can imagine, but they wanted to vote for him because he was addressing things and he entered, and positioned himself in a place that nobody dared to position themselves because they were too opportunistic, stupid, and cynical. This is the result. I think if they continue, they have two options. They have two options. To somehow physically eliminate him, to put him in jail, to send him abroad, or even worse, I don't even want to mention it, or to lose. Because they continue with their idiotic behavior. And if they do, the only possible outcome is for him to win. I don't know if Hans sees it differently, but...
Yeah, exactly. As long as you don't change the realities, don't start solving the problems that have fed the anger of the voters, and you will get a similar outcome in the future. It's the same. So and that's why I think the scenario of the EU and NATO was to get rid of this guy at all from political life, and now that's happening now. His followers and bodyguards are very suspect guys, by the way. They have arms and lots of probably illegal money. They've been mercenaries in Africa or wherever, and now they hunt those guys down. So this is a huge blow, I think, to his image as well, so because it's all very weird, all these guys around him. So I don't want to have this guy as a president. Okay, I want to have a decent person, a pro-democracy person, that's just obvious, that's a standard today, and a peace-oriented person at the same time, in charge of the destiny of Romania, because this is what people actually want. And they want their economic, social problems solved, okay, or see a perspective that they are being addressed. So it's very complex, and it shows that the current approach of the Western elites, EU, NATO, US, neoliberal, mainstream, influencers, media, has reached its limits, okay, with the wars, with inflation, with all these things that you have discussed through. And there are millions out there, okay, who can't afford it anymore. They are fed up. They don't have a ventil, to get rid of the frustration. We, the so-called intellectuals, the Western-oriented, we are not that much hit by it and the whole thing, but other people, they are simply fed up with it and they react in this way. And one more thing, the fact that people vote with an extremist, let's say, instead of being themselves extremists and going to the street and start doing justice themselves, you know, just, I don't know, doing a revolt, a revolution, hitting, smashing, attacking public authorities. It's a sign of civilization of these extremist voters, okay? They just put a stamp on a piece of paper. That's how they live their so-called extremism. But they don't go and kill the guys that they think are responsible for the problems that they have. You know, that's what I will say. So it's all much softer somehow. And I hope the society in Romania will somehow get over this thing. But it's definitely a historic moment that has happened.
Yeah, there were also the
Wolfgang. You
what?
have okay. Now it's for a
now the parliament elections were also. Are there the anti-war parties? Are there inside? How how support? Which support they got? Or how is it?
Yes.
May I just one more thing? Unfortunately, I need to go, and I'm not that informed about the parliamentary elections and those details. So I must apologize, but I will leave now the discussion. And yeah, thank you for having talked to you.
Thank you very much, Hans. We stay in contact and try.
I think all of us are kind of I don't know, tired of this whole adventure that we are going through. Still, I'm optimistic that we can find a creative solution over time and get out strengthened from this crisis. And it shows to me that Romania is suddenly relevant for Europe. Okay, when these problems break out, we see, hey, there's an issue that affects all of us. So that's a responsibility as well for us to communicate what's happening in Romania and find understanding for the complexity of Romania and come up with solutions for Romania and for the European Union, how to get out of this kind of impossible situations. And the solutions are definitely social, economic, and peace. So that's the way to go. So away from escalation, war, this whole bullshit. Okay, that's my point of view.
Romania plays naturally a big role. They have rockets with which they can attack Russia. And they built the biggest NATO base or US base in Europe, now in Romania. So it plays really a role as a front state. And you will be, if it comes to war, you will be as affected as we in Germany, because here are many commando structures of the US Army and NATO. So we will be victims. And there we have all reasons in both countries to struggle for peace and try to put our energy inside, that we will not be the victims of this conflict. Okay. Thank you, Hans.
Love and peace.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So Maria, we continue, no? Also the question was with the parliament.
We continue with the parliament. Let me explain a bit about the Romanian parliament. Luckily, we have a lot of parties. And now the composition of the parliament is way more balanced in the sense that so far, but is balanced in what way? Politically and ideologically is the most homogeneous parliament you can imagine, no left-wingers. We have the Social Democrats that culturally are conservatives. There was even a delegation, you know, of parliamentarians and politicians coming from Germany and the West, and they were, of course, with Mao, with atheists and all the rest, and the Romanian Social Democrats, I emphasize, took them on a tour to see the Orthodox monasteries. And that should tell you everything about the cultural progressiveness of our Social Democrats. And they were, of course, the ones that organized the referendum for defining the family, not as it is today in Romanian constitution, the union between spouses, which can be women, men, or whatever, 2 women, 2 men, or whatever, but a union between a man and a woman. And this was organized by the Social Democrats. This should also tell you something about how progressive the Social Democrats are, but economically, they are a bit more realistic and they are a bit more pragmatic, and they raised, for instance, the wages of doctors in Romania, and the quality of medical services improved. And they are more pragmatic. They are the biggest party in Romania. But all the others are crazy right-wingers. You have more liberal, cultural, like the Union Save Romania, that got about 10% or 12% of the votes, but they are libertarians. They are great admirers of Milei in Argentina, and they want to destroy the state. That should tell you something about how realistic they are. Then you have the national liberals who are rocking like it's 1980. It is as if nothing happens since Reagan ruled. We even had people that have the same political doctrine as I think even the Republicans would have thought exaggerated back in the 80s. Privatization, austerity, all the rest. The entrepreneur as a social hero. Then, and this went down to, I think, 40% because they had a non-candidate, and the incumbent president is very much hated in the Romanian society. Then these are the so-called pro-Europe. So you have a parliament that is ideologically homogeneous right-wing and lifting and tilting towards right ideologically. Almost no socialists, none at all. No communism, you know, that's even worse than declaring publicly that you have sexually transmitted diseases. So no way, no way in the Romanian parliament or political life. But then you have another criteria for defining the power and the opposition, and that is pro-EU and NATO and the independent sovereignist pole. Okay, so this is a different type. So ideologically very homogeneous and tilting towards right and extreme right. And you have this new criteria of separating the power and the opposition. But now the opposition, the sovereign, you know, parties have together 35% of the votes, which is a lot. And you have the Alliance for the Union of Romanians that got around 18% of the votes. You have the party, the newly formed party of Călin Georgescu, the party of young people, with about, I think, 6% of the votes. And the others go to SOS, the party of saving Romanians. They are already have these messianic, you know, ideas that they want to save Romanians. And also we have, it is a tendency, Romanian politics, they all want to save us, you know, and they have this messianic drive. And now I say it is more balanced in the sense that the pro-EU parties lost a lot of their influence, and now you see the pro-sovereign pole getting stronger, which is not in itself good news. Why? Because if you don't allow, Wolfgang, this is the main problem. If you don't allow for healthy criticism, for debates, for reaching a solution honestly, you know, inside of the European Union and NATO, you will get all sorts of weird individuals that will capitalize on the frustration, fear, and, you know, on desperation of Romanian public, and come up with the weirdest forms of right-wing extremism. If you don't allow debate, if you don't allow a socialist party to develop, if you do your best to destroy the left, if you do your best to destroy any type of criticism and associate any type of criticism with the pro-Putin attitude, then you get the pro-Putin people. you know, who are very interesting, let me tell you. For instance, Diana Șoșoacă, she made a show in the European Parliament where she appeared with some sort of device on her face that looked like a mask, suggesting that we were forced to wear the mask, and it was so detrimental to us because it was destroying our freedom of speech. And she made a whole spectacle and started screaming, and that thing that she had on her face looked like a cage. There were people joking that it looked like a BDSM, you know, device, and the internet was full of memes because they are crazy, ridiculous, you know, and it's such a tragedy to see that these are the people advocating for peace in Romania. And of course, you have a small minority of people like us, you know, who are trying to say to the power and to the elites, people, if you don't listen to us, if you don't allow for a debate, look what you're getting. Is this what you want? What do you think will happen to you when these people come to power? Isn't it nicer to look to us, to hear from people like me and Wolfgang and Hans, you know, people that you can really have a conversation with? If you don't listen to us and you try to associate us with Putin, well, you will get.
Yeah,
just wait to see what's coming.
The split, how I see it in this question now, is those who profited from the change in Romania the last many years, minority in the society, but especially intellectuals with a lot of intellectual power and media power, and those who really lost, socially lost and are in the corner, they want to change now. And because there is not a strong left who can win them and give them ideas and can unite them, they go to the right, because these are the only ones who seems that they want a change. And naturally then, and on one hand, naturally, this point with peace is very important for your social life. If the money goes to Ukraine or in the US factories to build arms, you don't have it for the social welfare in the country. And naturally, this idea to try to put the frustrations in the society to a foreign enemy, this is the normal thing what elites everywhere in the world did. Bush did it before the Iraq war. People wanted new health problems, education problems. Then the Iraq war came and all these discussions were out. It was only to fight the enemy. And I think the same they do now with Putin, to blame all the complications and conflicts in the country between the classes on a foreign enemy. And it works. This is our problem. It works. And so we have to discuss how we come out. It is for us all important, for you in Romania, for us in Germany, and maybe even for the whole world, because the conflict can escalate to an atomic war easily. And how I see it, the Western elites, they don't listen if Putin wants them and say, please, we have red lines. They jump over and over and over the next one till they force him, if you don't want to give up his positions, maybe really to react seriously. So we have to see.
Your analysis is fantastic. I mean, it's perfect. This is one of the points that I wanted to make. Of course, the ones that are applauding the decisions are the winner of transition and the winners of the current society, and you have the losers on the other side that are just waiting for their chance to manifest their anger and frustration. This is a perfect analysis of the situation.
Okay, we stay we are not till now, West and Europeans, the critical voice, we are not so much united. So we have to work on it. And here our conversations can be one point, how we come forward, that we unite and took the good ideas of both sides, bring them together to get a European future. I'm still advocating that we should take the Charter of Paris to overcome the split of the Cold War and build a democratic, peaceful and social Europe together. And we should see how we can people a positive view, not only what we don't want, but that we formulate what we want. And then maybe the discussion about Russia and who's responsible for the crisis goes away. And says because they want to say with Putin, you can't talk. We said, no, without partnership with Russia. You can't build a peaceful Europe and a social Europe. It's not possible. So we have to find ways to do it. So thank you very much for our talk. It was very nice with you again. No? See us. Have a nice day.
Have a nice
For
day.
peace. No? Bye-bye.
Bye.
Peace. Barricade.